All right, so let's get into it today. Worldcoin has launched, and this is a project that is done by Sam Altman. And if you don't know who Sam Altman is, he is the creator, one of the creators, I should say, of ChatGPT. So we'll dive in deep, tell you exactly what it is. Do I invest in this token? Do I like the technology? We'll answer all those questions for you today. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. All right, a few things to start with. If you look at the charts and you look at some of the tokenomics behind this, there's some intrigue that you could look at. And you have to always remember that when you're investing in crypto, there are these projects that are called degens. And if you're brand new to crypto, maybe you're here on the first time, first thing I'd ask you to do is subscribe. But if you go into a degen token, it simply means it's a startup. Most likely, in many cases, they're not doxed, meaning you don't know who these people are that have launched these projects. The good thing is you know who Sam Altman is, and you understand what ChatGPT is. So maybe there's something here. So that's why we're doing a video on it today. If you look at the chart, 220 right now, down of course on the day of launch, 10 billion in overall total supply, max supply there at 10 bill, and then fully diluted market cap currently around 22 billion as an opportunity. So when you look at that, and then you also look at Etherscan, this, let me kind of zoom in on this, it's a little hard to see, but right there you'll see the amount of holders that are currently in this token. And that's not a lot of holders. So this could be a good thing because that means that we've got some whales and some sharks that are investing into this. So maybe there is something here obviously behind the person who is running this whole idea. So OpenAI Sam Altman launches Worldcoin, the crypto project. And the concept is pretty straightforward. We'll get into exactly how it works, what it's going to do for society, what it's going to do for Web3, and kind of explain all that. But if you look at their video, it says follow Worldcoin on Twitter or download a World app. We'll talk about the app for the most up-to-date information on these Orb locations. Now, what I'm going to play right here, let me kind of mute this so I can talk over this a little bit, is these are the locations where these orbs are being placed. So all around the world, these shiny objects that basically do eye scans to help get biometric data off of you. Now, many people would look at that and say, all right, this is already an invasion of privacy. It's already creepy. I'm not sure I would want to do this. The advantage with this is supposedly anonymous. So if you look at the app, you'll notice right there, proof of personhood, anonymous. This is what you would get once that you've done a scan. It goes into the Worldcoin app itself. All of this running on Optimism and Ethereum. So there is some uniqueness here, and we'll kind of break out how and why this might be important for maybe mankind. We'll talk about this as a bigger picture. And if you think about what Altman has done in OpenAI and obviously with ChatGPT, there's some real possibility here. On their Twitter account says World app is designed to be used by everyone. The native iOS, Android apps are around 18 megabyte in support, most active smartphones in the world, 92% around Androids, 94% of iPhones. So this is good. It's going to be almost ready to go on any iPhone and any Android that's out there, all gas-free transactions on the app itself. If you kind of think about this, though, it's a little creepy because this was coming from the movie Circle. And doesn't this look a little bit, dystopian? Anyway, I don't know. We'll see. I want to go into a clip here of Sam Altman kind of explaining a little bit more about what this is. Listen in.
The reason I was excited about it is as the world sort of heads towards powerful AI systems, I thought that if we could do something to eventually redistribute wealth through some sort of global UBI at scale, or maybe even access to these systems, which would be the most important component of wealth someday, and also be able to verify unique humanness with a different lens on how to preserve privacy, that would be more important as sort of AI advanced. If there's a non-fraudulent solution to that also is privacy preserving, that's kind of the goal.
All right, some good points there, and I think this is something that everybody is a little bit concerned with in terms of privacy and also personhood, in the essence of how AI could potentially dive into deep fakes a lot more. We've already seen this in the voice protocols that are out there with AI. We will see it in video. And it is going to be a problem that, just you being you and being able to identify yourself for whatever purpose is a very important scenario, and especially in Web3, because digital ID will be everything. Today, it's all, you go to a website, you log in, you have your credentials and all that, but this is moving beyond that, because that can still be stolen. It can still be, that's why we have so much fraud, so much internet problems in terms of cybersecurity. All those kind of things could be solved around a system that has this kind of identity security. Now, the question is can they do it? Can they do it the right way? We'll kind of debate that a little bit throughout the video today. Worldcoin, if you go to their website, protocol to bring global proof of personhood to the internet, and I think this is important. It will open up some ID use cases. So remember, this is not that you would have to have it to do these kinds of things. This is just showing applications in which this could be utilized. So voting, social media, which I think is going to be a big one, wealth distribution, and so on. So DeFi and FinTech, obviously we know about NFTs and events, because POAP's also very big opportunity there, just on proof of attendance. So there are some scenarios, and this is something we've talked about here on the show quite a bit, especially when it comes to Web3, because Web3, in our opinion, this is really the future of where technology is going. And a lot of people don't truly understand how much different it is than Web2. I think with these kinds of technologies, it will accelerate it much faster. The question is, what does that growth curve look like? If you also go to their website, it shows you there's going to be different layers of ways that you can integrate into this, this system. One, through the phone, then you go through other methods, probably desktop, etc. Face verification is coming soon, and then biometric via the Orb. That's where you're going physically to an Orb location, scanning your eye, and it's like the highest, what they call the highest attack cost, meaning it's the most secure against anything that could be cyber attacks, fake scenarios that go into your ID. And this is going to be very, very important in Web3, because your digital ID is more important now than I think it will ever be, because of the way that it can be used in so many systems so quickly. That's the big key, because today it's a little more difficult once that you get into someone, because you're using a different password for that app, for this bank, for that bank. But once they integrate into your system, it's all a matter of time before they get a complete, jailbreak of what's happening. So this has some potential here, I think, in terms of technology and really the future of it. Right now, 2 million people have already gone in and actually done the physical iris scan to where this is going into a database. That's the real question here, is how secure is that? There are also potential points of failure. We'll talk about that in a minute and kind of go into this. But this is interesting too. Time to 1 million users. ChatGPT hits it in 5 days. Instagram 2.5 months. Spotify 5 months. 10 months on Facebook. Now I want you to think about this for a minute. We'll stay on this screen for a second. When Facebook first started to get to 1 million users, you have to remember the era of mobile devices did not even exist. Social media really was birthing off of a brand new era, and a lot of people looked at social media as an invasion of privacy. So 10 months even was still very fast. When you look at all the parameters that Facebook was challenged with. Spotify was the same kind of thing. It was only available in Europe. It still had limitations on, you couldn't even get it on certain apps, on certain phones, all those kind of, so it took longer. And then 2.5 on Instagram, again, also a different kind of time and era, even though mobile was much faster in terms of adoption, and social was now accepted. So the fact that chat has done it in 5 days doesn't surprise me, because we are at such a, social media is so rampant, everybody uses it, nobody questions it. Mobile devices, you just saw the data right there, 98, 95% of almost every phone out there is going to be able to handle these kind of applications. So being able to grow quickly and scale, I think almost any app today that's launching that has real credibility would probably grow this fast. So I'm not too concerned that this is a big deal that this is growing so fast. I want to jump into a couple of things, because this is kind of where they're going to try to get to 1 billion signups and beyond. This is, again, over from their website. I've just marked up a few things here. Let me make sure we've got that there. All right, we have onboarded 25 operators that run more than 30 devices in 12 countries across continents like Africa, South America, Europe, Asia, and there's also some here in the United States. In fact, I believe here in Miami, where we're located, you can actually go and get it done. Further in this statement here, it says, so far the best performing operators have been able to onboard around 1,000 users per orb per week. So it's still a process to get it done. This is going to take time to get to 1 billion users. And then they have achieved these results despite using prototype devices, which are going to be much slower than the production model. And we'll go over in the tech itself. Average weekly sign-up rate across all operators, 764 per orb, 1,069 per operator. So you can kind of see some of the photos here that they have going on of people going in and scanning the devices and saying, okay, well, I'm into Web3 or I'm into NFTs or I see the use of digital ID and I want a digital ID maybe for the very first time, because some of these are going into countries that don't even have that network in place, which is another advantage. Last point here, we believe that there is a path for this model to onboard billions of users. And I'm going to kind of scooch in on this a little bit just to show you the ramp up phase right here. And you'll notice here, range of different sign-up rates, 350 to 1,400. Average observed sign-up around 700 per week. So to get there in 2 years, we would end up at right around 1.5 to 2 billion users on board. And if we get in there on the range of different sign-ups, depending on how many, we could get to literally about 3.5 billion people signed onto this. Now, that is where it gets intriguing, because you put half the planet on something in terms of digital ID, the capacity to really expand into social, all sorts of different kinds of apps within, including payment gateways, all those kind of things, banking, etc. This really starts to create what is a global centralized system. That's where it breaks down a little bit. I want to get into a little bit about that, because we're going to show you some different opinions of why they think this is good and bad, both ways. Here was an article, ChatGPT reaches 100 million users in 2 months after launch. Again, another significant growth. And I don't think it's going to be a situation where this doesn't grow fast, because there's a lot of countries out there that do not have digital ID or ID in general. This will most likely really proliferate in many of those kinds of countries for sure. Question is in the Western countries, and especially those who are a little bit concerned about privacy and those kind of things, will it be able to dominate and truly entrench itself into society? I think the key here is the decentralized aspect of it. This was just showing some of the locations here, the canvas in Miami, where you can get into this, Long Beach, of course, right there at Blank Spaces, etc. There's several places out there that you can go and do this. I'd love to know from you guys, would you go out and if it didn't know who you are, it's anonymous, and I'll explain that in a second, because there's kind of a caveat to this. It doesn't know who you are, but it's getting your data. So your physical data saying, okay, yep, this is a real person. It's not a deep fake. It's not somebody that's going to be able to use this information to be able to log on unless they're identified through this app and through this scan. So would you do it? If it gave you easier access to all of your things, social, banking, voting, any kind of scenarios that would apply or need identity. And true identity, not just these, which I think with social media is going to be very different, because now we're getting into decentralized social media. Different conversation for sure. But if you haven't watched our Lens Protocol video, make sure and check it out. Just go Lens Protocol. It'll explain a lot about what decentralized social media is. So what's next? We're dedicated to open sourcing as much of our technology as possible and ultimately fully decentralizing the project. This is the most important statement, I believe, that Altman has got to make happen. This is a very significant component. With this much data, this much power, this is a real problem. It's also maybe an Achilles heel for what Worldcoin is trying to do, and overall of what this Orb project would look like. And here's some of the tech just to show you. This is a device that looks a little bit scary. Thermal imager. I mean, you can kind of see there's a lot of technology in here that is truly intriguing. Now, it may not be any more than any other iris scanner, but the fact that it's sequencing data into an app that then gives you the capacity to be identified on the blockchain and have this integration in across all sorts of components, very interesting about how World ID might work. All right, so further into it, just to show you some of the apps that you can integrate into right now. So there's many of you guys have already seen Auth0 before, Discord, some of the other apps that are out there. Right there's Lens Protocol. This is the one that I think will be very important. Here's just the fact of using POAP, which is proof of attendance. Another scenario, I think that works for events. Starkside, Talent Pool, quite a few in here. Now, and I think this is very early, so we'll see a lot more growth in this area. The question is do you invest in the token? Do you get into this right now at its early stage? It's just launched. There's a lot of hubbub around this. It's a degen token, so if you are getting to it, you're going to have to go through methods that aren't typical. Most likely it'll get listed on maybe some regular exchanges, maybe here in the US. We'll see. But right now, the question is, would you degen into this token? I mean, it's trading around 220. Would you come in and say, okay, maybe this goes up a little bit? Or is it one of those? I look at it, it is completely going to Las Vegas and betting at the craps table. But these are the kind of technologies. And if you think about this, this is the same way a VC or an angel investor works with new tech. I go in and angel invest all the time. There are many times that I invest into something like that, and I know that it's just going to be, it's never going to make it. But there's that one chance that it could. That's the question mark I think you have to play here. All right, so here was Udi kind of jumping in on this. I'm fuming about the launch of World Token or Worldcoin. And of course, this is Taproot Wizards. You guys know about that with the ordinals. But I'm fuming about the launch of Worldcoin. Billions of people putting their biometric data in a device. Disaster. We must do better. Sent from my iPhone with Face ID. I love that. That's a great joke. I love Udi. He's always so, cheeky. Here's another one right here. This comes from Anatoly, talking a little bit around this. And it's kind of interesting. Worldcoin is 100 times more transparent than Apple, but really more important to keep the pressure on them. I think the key here is, again, back to decentralization. The most interesting thing about this is the simultaneous global launch. I thought that was also a good statement because this is a little bit of a phenomenon. Granted, it's getting traction because of who's doing it. So that kind of makes a little bit of sense. And then feature optimization would come after scale. Figuring out how to take a product globally should drive features and more often than not simplify it to its core. That's something that I think all designers try to get to is scale when you get into something that's a little bit more technical than you've got here. But remember, these are operators that are getting these orbs, they're going into cities. I don't know how that is being secured. That's probably a fail point that I think needs to be solved pretty quickly, especially on these early days of signups and scans. Vitalik came in and there was a lot that he said. Risk in WorldCoin's construction. Let me kind of zoom in on this. Even though the system currently only stores hashed versions of iris scans, not the actual images, and aims to protect user identity with snarks and other cryptographic techniques, there's an inherent risk of identity-related information being misused or leaked. This is a problem that I do agree with, especially in these early phases, because all systems in their early states are always vulnerable. If someone else scans your iris and they can check it against the database to determine whether or not you have a world ID, potentially iris scans might reveal more information. That's the other thing when you go or pop up on the grid. Think of this like Minority Report. You pop up on the grid, maybe you don't have the scan, and I believe in Minority Report that was the whole issue of the eyes. And even if you don't have that scan in there, the minute that you actually have to initiate a world ID, now you're on the grid. Now maybe that was for voting or applying to a bank account, whatever it might be. That's the question mark of where that data gets shared with, because this will be so integrated across so many different places. Unless enough orbs were created that anyone could easily access one, it will lead to an imbalance of world coin distribution, favoring urban sitters, which I agree with. However, WorldCoin has previously highlighted phone number verification. That's the little chart we showed you on that ramp. There's going to be some other alternatives that you can do this with, which I think will be, but the ultimate security layer will be the actual iris scan. The integrity of WorldCoin's Orb hardware device construction can't be verified. That was the technology we just showed you, leaving the possibility of backdoors. That's also, even though it might be firmware, eventually it's going to have to connect to something, and that's always a concern. And I think this is kind of the concern with AI once it gets to a certain level. WorldCoin's governance and proprietary algorithms are further centralized concerns. That's another problem. Though, to WorldCoin's credit, they have also committed to decentralize over time. This is always the question, because I think in the beginning, everybody wants to do right and says this is the way to go and it will happen this way. but do they execute on it and do they actually do it? That's the real question here. I think that's going to go forward quite a bit. A couple last statements here. A world with no proof of personhood seems more likely to be a world dominated by centralized identity solutions. True that. Buterein's proposed solution, he says he suggests combining 3 current approaches: social graph, interesting, general hardware biometric, and specialized hardware biometric techniques. Such as a solution could provide decentralized, scalable, and privacy-conscious systems that is secure against fake identity. So that's an interesting concept of utilizing a multi-layered approach, and it would give you a potential. It's kind of like, you don't want a point of failure, and that is something that could be rolled out. Listen, these guys are super smart. I mean, you're talking about Sam Altman, one of the creators of OpenAI and ChatGPT. This is not something they've thought about lightly. I think everybody sees the potential here of going forward. Here's Wu Blockchain coming in. He wrote, this was talking about that blog post that we just showed. But it does show the aspect of it. Here, let me zoom out on that for you. Based on social graph, hardware biometric, specialized hardware biometric, and what the privacy levels could be, because specialized hardware biometric would be something like these orbs, so fairly high. So interesting aspects. I want to go to this next clip here real quick. And the next clip is getting into more critiques about this. So listen in on this one.
Like, the goal of Worldcoin is to scan everyone's irises. And while there is the technical explanation for why this is still secure, there's also just like, but you're still doing it. And so maybe we could reflect on that. Like, Alex, what would you say to that feedback or criticism?
You should not have to trust us, and you will not have to trust us. Like, that's a common pushback we get right now, and I think it's totally fair that not everything yet is open source. So this is obviously we move on that as fast as we can, but there's just like real world kind of trade-offs we have to work around. So just don't trust us. Like, look at the documentation, look at the code. If you find something you don't like, all right, just talk to us.
All right, so there's a couple of statements there, I think, that are a little bit elitist in the sense that look at the documentation of the code. These are people that are normal, everyday world citizens. Many of them, in many cases, don't go to that level of research and even understanding. What they get into is they understand something new and interesting. It's an app. It's going to give me digital ID. It's an easy overlook. So I think you have to be cautious about this. And also from an investment standpoint, because this could also implode, meaning if we get too much pushback on the idea of identity and personal freedoms and personal privacy and all those kind of things that right now are kind of at the head of what's happening in society, especially on social media, because of all the things we've seen over the last couple of years with the Twitter files and the open up of all sorts of nefarious actions. I think this is a concern because in most cases, people don't trust governments, so they don't trust entities that are trying to do something like this. Do you trust Apple? Do you trust Google? Do you trust any of those kinds of organizations? Facebook? You can name the list. That's the question mark. If you're okay with it, maybe you're an under 30 and you're like, hey, this is no big deal. I'm completely open. I don't have any problem with it. Or maybe you're an under 30 or an over 30 and you're like, nope, I'm a little bit more concerned about security, and I'm a little bit more concerned about my personal privacy and my personal identity. That is the number one thing right now, people, that we need to be watching for is personal identity. Again, just quick to look at the chart here. You can kind of see it. It, of course, had that big movement at the top there, which I think this is all inside stuff. And then slows down a little bit for the day. And then, of course, it's trailing in here, still holding it around 220 as we record this today. And again, just drop some comments down below. If you're going to invest in this as a token, if you're going to buy it, it's a risk. It's a high risk. It's a degen level, investment. If you're into that, let me know. Drop some tokens down there. If you think there's other opportunities out there, I'd love to hear what you guys think those are. A couple of points I want to hit on here at the last part of this. Let me make sure I got everything on this. Yeah, let's go here. Capped at 10 billion tokens. This is a little bit more about the tokenomics. 15 years, which at one point the governance on the network can decide to implement inflation rate up to 1.5. 75% of tokens have been earmarked for the community. Good. Allocation insiders is increased to 25% from 20. Not as good. Investor and team tokens will be locked up at launch, slowly released after the first year and for the next 2 years. That's kind of the vested model that we see a lot, going in there. All 7.5 billion wild or world WLD, which will go into the community, has been minted before the launch, and the foundation aims to allocate 6 billion of those users, but they'll be unlocked over 15 years. So that's an interesting analysis there on that. And then not all 2.5 billion WLD will be for insiders has been allocated. So there's still some time yet left for that. So it's an interesting project. I want to end here on another clip. And this clip is of Elon. And listen to what he has to say.
OpenAI, I mean, you seem somewhat frustrated with them. You were one of the big contributors early on.
The reason I am the reason OpenAI exists.
How much money did you give them?
I'm not sure the exact number, but it's some number on the order of $50 million.
$50 million.
More than helped. It wouldn't exist without me.
It wouldn't exist without you. So
I came up with a name. So
should you have gotten governance for that money? Should you have gotten some level of control, perhaps, in retrospect?
Yeah, I fully admit to being a huge idiot here.
That was an interesting soundbite right there. I think Elon's a little salty on this situation. And if you look at what's happening today, other than launching Worldcoin, you also have the launch of X, which is formerly known as Twitter. Interesting times right now as the titans of tech begin to reshape and reform how we, us plebs out there in the land of crypto, are going to be functioning on Web3 and maybe in almost every walk of life. So it's going to be interesting to track. Let me know if you're going to invest in this one. I'd love to know what you guys are going to do. So send me some DMs. If you want to catch me out there on X, you can do that at Paul Barron. It's very simple. And if you're not in our Diamond Circle, make sure and get in. We'll leave a link down below. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBath.